Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got several updates to get to here when it comes to the Chicago Bears stadium situation. First and foremost, I do want to say they still plan on breaking ground in the summer of 2025. Very similar timeline to the Cleveland Browns situation, but it came out a few days ago that they probably were not going to come to any type of agreement, the Chicago Bears ownership and the city, in terms of a funding package for the stadium by 2025. So potentially in early 2025, maybe in the winter, they could come to an agreement, but apparently everything has been tabled, or at least there's a very, very low percent chance of any agreement being reached until at least 2025. We do also have this new article. Despite Lakefront focus, the Bears president leaves door open to Arlington Heights stadium opportunity. And this is always going to be something. There's always going to be dialogue with Arlington Heights. They want to at least have some type of leverage where they can say to the city of Chicago, we've got this plan, the stadium right south of where the current Soldier Field is, knock down Soldier Field, turn it into a park, turn it into a community area. That's what we want to do, but if you don't give us our funding package, we still have the potential $5 billion stadium project in Arlington Heights. We've already bought all of those acres. We invested around $200 million in the purchase of them. And so the Bears were talking about this on TV during their first preseason game, saying, quote, the focus is the museum campus downtown. I still think that's the most beautiful piece of property in the country where lakes meet architectural downtown. That was Kevin Warren, who was basically hired, by the way, to spearhead this project and get it done. And trust me, they do want to get it done ASAP based on what's been happening the past few years with Soldier Field. The initial plans about 4 years ago to try and remodel Soldier Field and put some type of retractable roof on top of it, those went kaput. And now it's this decision. Is it Arlington Heights? Is it this new stadium? I'd be very interested, considering it seems like the governor and also other political people within Chicago are really against major public funding for this stadium. Could we get legitimate renderings for the Arlington Heights proposal? We got the initial ones 2 years ago in the fall of 2022 when they released those, kind of just showing what it potentially could have looked like. The stadium was basically just like a circle or an oval. So I do wonder if they will update and give us legitimate renderings for the Arlington Heights Stadium. There is always going to be Arlington Heights dialogue until this stadium in Chicago gets done. And if the funding is not right, maybe they will shift completely to Arlington Heights. To me, it is a very similar situation to the Brook Park situation with the Cleveland Browns. When you look at kind of bidding against each other, the main city, the main hub of Cleveland versus Brook Park, and you also do have the main city, Chicago, versus the smaller suburb of Arlington Heights. So the dynamic right now is that it seems like they're closed for business, at least in terms of negotiating this, until the start of 2025. The governor came out and said very unlikely there's going to be any type of deal with public money until 2025. So if that is the case, that really doesn't delay anything as long as they can get the proposal in place and the deal done before the summer of 2025. If things get delayed even further, then you're talking about having to push the stadium back another year and maybe the stadium not opening until 2029, which really at this point, every year is precious when it comes to Chicago. It really makes no sense for the Bears outside of, I don't know, just history in terms of them not having a closed stadium, like a translucent roof stadium, because of the amount of events they could host. I mean, they can really take advantage of this. Look at New York with the Meadowlands right now. They really can't host anything. Chicago could be a huge hub. They could host multiple Super Bowls in the span of 10 years if they get a brand new stadium along with multiple Final Fours. It just makes perfect sense. This is a big opportunity for them, and that's why I think they want to fast track this as fast as possible, and they want to stick to that timeline of getting shovels into the ground in the summer of 2025 and not delaying it even by a year, because that's more lost revenue for them. I will say, when it comes to the construction of this stadium, it's going to be a complete mess because they are going to be building the stadium right next to Soldier Field. So in essence, for 2 years, the Bears are going to be playing games right next to a construction site. And then when the stadium gets built, they're going to have to demolish Soldier Field immediately with the stadium already built. And then they're going to have to revamp that entire area as well. And there are renderings, and apparently they still want to keep the pillars, the historic pillars that they saved from the original Soldier Field when they remodeled it for around $1.5 billion back in 2001. They still want to keep those, but right now I would say that they are still trending towards staying in Chicago. Unlike the Cleveland Browns situation, it seems like the Browns are going to be going to Brook Park. Seems like they're still staying in Chicago, but it hasn't been very good dialogue with the politicians in the city in terms of trying to extract enough public money for what seems to be around a $4.7 billion project, with the stadium itself costing around $2.4 billion and potentially the public paying 50 to 60% of that money. They released the initial renderings. They had that big party. And ever since that, it seems like this project has been completely stuck in the mud. Nothing has happened. If anything, it's gone maybe a little bit backwards in terms of the dialogue. You would think if they were having that big renderings party, the huge release, and potentially getting that done, it just has not happened. The momentum has been completely stifled. Not that this is a huge deal. Again, if they can get this deal done sometime in January, March, April, whenever it is, as long as it's before the summer, they can get this stadium open possibly in 2028 with over 2 years of construction time on it. If they do have to pivot to Arlington Heights, I would probably guarantee that the stadium's not going to be opening until at least 2029, maybe 2030, because I do think this is their number one option. They want this in Chicago. It's going to be better. It's going to be easier for everyone in terms of the accessibility of the stadium. It's right next to the lake. It is a really good spot. You have the stadium district surrounding it. And when it comes to like hosting big events, it's right in Chicago. It's not like people have to go into Chicago and then take a car somewhere or rent a car. It's just kind of annoying. So they want to keep it in Chicago. But if this doesn't work, if the politicians do not want to pay that much in terms of public money and the citizens don't want to pay it, we could get the Arlington Heights situation happening, which would be something completely different, to where that would be a $5 billion project in total. I'm sure it would be, I don't know if it would be the exact same stadium. Like, that's what I'm wondering. Would they just take the same stadium and put it in that Arlington Heights spot? The interesting thing with the Arlington Heights thing, they're going to build like rivers apparently surrounding the stadium. At least that's what I initially saw. Maybe they'll change it. I don't know. This was 2.5 years ago. But I had seen they were going to build like a river and like right outside the stadium, and then have two bridges going over top. Pedestrian bridges, that is, going over top, where fans can enter and leave the stadium. So if Arlington Heights does happen, I do think it's probably going to be 2029, but it does seem right now like there is really nothing that's going to be happening to this potential Bears new stadium in terms of news, at least until 2025, although we could definitely get more dialogue surrounding the potential Arlington Heights location. I'm sure the Bears would be perfectly fine with more news coming out on that to try and show Chicago that they have leverage and they have another option in Arlington Heights to potentially get a better deal and more public money for this stadium. Right now it seems to be a standstill, at least from what I can see. You can see a little interesting blurb from this article. When asked if the NFL franchise will have finalized the Lakefront Stadium location within the year, Warren said, quote, "I'm confident that the Bears will have a new stadium that we'll be able to play in." So obviously that's a complete non-answer. It's very vague. That opens up the idea to potentially go to Arlington Heights, because he didn't even say he was confident that they will be in that Lakefront Stadium. That's a big change in tune from the initial statements that were made at that renderings party in the spring, where it seemed like they were very confident that this stadium was going to happen along the lake right next to Soldier Field. And just another little inkling to throw in there, you've also got Aurora, Illinois, possibly trying to get their name in the mix to get a stadium built there, which is just another city, another suburb surrounding Chicago. I do remember hearing about them like 2 or 3 months ago, talking about it, with pretty much all the dialogue slowing down on this Chicago Bears stadium, Lakefront Stadium, that is. And if it doesn't happen, where will the Bears go? Probably Arlington Heights, but there are some other cities that would be an option. I would still say there's a better than a 65 to 70% chance this Lakefront Stadium happens. They've invested a lot. They've given out some really nice renderings that I'm sure cost a lot of money. This is something that they want to do for everyone in terms of accessibility. But Arlington Heights is still open. They're still going to use that, even though there was some souring going on with Arlington Heights, their mayor, and the Bears. Seems like they've mended fences. I saw a few articles talking about Arlington Heights still wanting the Bears badly. And so even with the tax situation, there was like a problem with taxes in terms of the land that they bought. They've apparently ironed all of that out. And so even though Chicago's their number one option with the Lakefront Stadium, they're still talking to Arlington Heights and maybe Aurora, Illinois as well. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.